Alexander McQueen is cutting 60 workers from its 180-person Italian luxury manufacturing workforce in what management calls an emergency restructuring. These are the artisans at McQueen's facilities near Florence and Milan who craft the tailored jackets, leather goods, and accessories that once made this Kering-owned brand the luxury conglomerate's fastest-growing label. This is the story of how a house built on Savile Row precision and theatrical brilliance has fallen from generating over 800 million euros at its peak to barely scraping 200 million euros today, forcing François-Henri Pinault's Artemis Holding Company and its Kering subsidiary to make brutal choices about craft, commerce, and survival in an industry where image is everything. The irony cuts deep. Alexander McQueen, a brand whose founder, Lee. Alexander McQueen famously declared, "Everything I do is based on tailoring," now finds itself dismantling the very Italian workshops that embody that philosophy. The facilities in Scandicci's leather district near Florence, plus Novara and Parabiago near Milan, represent the beating heart of European luxury manufacturing, the places where raw materials transform into objects of desire through centuries-old made-in-Italy techniques passed down through generations of artisans. But let's rewind to understand how we got here, because the McQueen story reads like a fashion fairy tale that took a very dark turn. Lee Alexander McQueen's journey began not in the ateliers of Paris or design studios of Milan, but on London's Savile Row in Mayfair. At just 16, he left school to apprentice at Anderson & Shepherd, one of Savile Row's founding institutions established in 1906, then moved to Gives & Hawkes, the royal warrant-holding tailor founded by Henry Poole's disciples. This was not glamorous fashion education. It was grunt work, measuring inseams and learning how a perfectly cut jacket should hang on the human form. That Savile Row foundation proved prophetic. When McQueen launched his eponymous label in 1992, his graduate collection from Central St. Martin's caught the eye of Isabella Blow, the legendary British Vogue editor who bought the entire collection. By 1996, he was appointed head designer at LVMH's Givenchy, succeeding John Galliano in one of fashion's most prestigious roles. The trajectory seemed unstoppable. The real transformation came in December 2000 when Gucci Group, now known as Kering, under François-Henri Pinault's Artemis Holding Company, acquired a majority stake in McQueen's company. Suddenly, this rebellious British designer had the backing of a luxury conglomerate with global reach and seemingly unlimited resources. They established boutiques worldwide, expanded product ranges, and positioned McQueen as the edgy theatrical counterpoint to sister brands like Gucci, Saint Laurent, Bottega Veneta, and Balenciaga. Everything changed again in February 2010 when Lee Alexander McQueen was found dead in his London flat, sending shockwaves through the fashion world. Sarah Burton, who had worked alongside McQueen for over a decade under the mentorship of Central St. Martin's influential professor Louise Wilson, stepped into the creative director role in May 2010. Her first major moment came in April 2011 when she designed Catherine Middleton's wedding dress for her marriage to Prince William, a moment that reportedly increased McQueen sales by 29% and cemented the brand's place in fashion history. Burton's era brought unexpected commercial success through an unlikely product, sneakers. The Alexander McQueen oversized sneaker launched during the spring and summer 2015 season, and it became a cultural phenomenon. These chunky white sneakers with exaggerated soles didn't just sell well, they dominated the brand's revenue stream. At the absolute peak of sneaker mania, this single product drove 80% of McQueen's overall revenue, with a baseline dependency of 40% during normal periods. For a house built on the precision of Savile Row tailoring, this dependency on athletic footwear represented both salvation and a fundamental identity crisis. The sneakers brought younger customers into the brand and generated massive cash flow, but they also overshadowed everything else McQueen created. The brand that once defined avant-garde fashion became known primarily for shoes you could wear to the gym. Going into 2020, McQueen was Kering's fastest-growing brand, fueled by aggressive retail expansion and those ubiquitous sneakers. But success built on a single product proved fragile. As the sneaker trend cooled, McQueen's over-reliance became a liability. Unlike LVMH's Louis Vuitton or even Kering's own Bottega Veneta, the brand had failed to develop other revenue drivers. Notably, they never created a successful handbag line, which serves as the financial backbone for most luxury houses like Hermes, whose bag business generates consistent billion-euro revenues. The numbers tell a brutal story. From peak revenues of over 800 million euros, the brand has crashed to below 200 million euros. That's not a gradual decline. It's a free fall that has lasted 3 years. According to union officials, management described an extremely critical economic picture for the period from 2022 to 2025 and painted an emergency situation marked by sharp declines in sales volumes and units produced. In September 2023, Sarah Burton announced her departure after 26 years at the brand, including 13 years as creative director. Neither Burton nor Kering ever explained why they parted ways, but the timing suggests creative and commercial tensions had reached a breaking point. Her replacement, Shawn McGirr, arrived in October 2023 with the impossible task of reviving a brand in crisis. McGirr's debut collection in March 2024 received brutal reviews from fashion critics and enthusiasts. Comments like, "Genuinely aghast at this, it's one of the worst shows I've ever seen," and "what a very bland, generic collection" flooded fashion forums. Critics noted that even at their worst moments, both McQueen and Burton had maintained exquisite tailoring standards, something they felt was missing from McGirr's work. The criticism highlights a fundamental challenge. How do you honor the legacy of a genius while creating something commercially viable for today's market? McGirr studied under Louise Wilson at Central St. Martin's, the same influential professor who mentored the original Alexander McQueen, but talent alone does not guarantee success in luxury fashion's brutal marketplace. Meanwhile, Kering itself faces broader challenges compared to rival LVMH. The French conglomerate, which also owns Gucci, Bottega Veneta, Saint Laurent, and Balenciaga, saw its revenue fall another 10% to 3.4 billion euros in the third quarter of 2025. In a July investor call, finance chief Armel Poulot noted that their other houses segment posted a recurring operating loss of 29 million euros in the first half, largely attributable to McQueen. Enter Luca Di Maio, who became Kering's chief executive officer in September 2025, with a mandate to restructure the entire group under Artemis's direction. Di Maio's assessment of McQueen was blunt. He said the solution was very simple. We must restructure, and we need to bring McQueen back to an acceptable level in terms of structural costs and investment. He was equally frank about the brand's limited appeal to potential buyers. He pointed out that for those looking under the bonnet, he did not think there were many potential buyers. He asked, does McQueen account for only 4% or 5% of the group's revenue? When a luxury conglomerate's chief executive officer publicly questions a brand's sale prospects, you know the situation is desperate. The restructuring began with the UK headquarters in October 2025. There, McQueen cut 55 jobs, representing roughly 20% of its London workforce. But the real shock came in January 2026, with the announcement of Italian cuts. The three facilities, Scandicci in Florence's leather district, Novara, and Parabiago near Milan, employ about 180 workers who represent the craftspeople behind McQueen's leather goods, footwear, and accessories. These are not just jobs being eliminated, they are repositories of made in Italy knowledge. Italian leatherworkers and shoemakers train for years to master their crafts. When a luxury house sheds these artisans, it is not just cutting costs, it is potentially losing capabilities that take decades to rebuild. The unions representing these workers, Filctum CGIL, FEMCA CISL, and Wiltec, are demanding maximum transparency regarding the industrial plan and recovery strategies, while calling for the activation of all synergies within the group to minimize the social impact of the restructuring. They understand that once these skilled positions disappear, they rarely return. Interestingly, Renzo Rosso, founder of OTB Group, which owns Diesel, Marni, and Maison Margiela, has reportedly expressed interest in acquiring McQueen, though any potential buyer would inherit the same fundamental challenges of making avant-garde fashion profitable in an increasingly commercial marketplace. McQueen has a 3-year turnaround plan that involves more than workforce reductions. The brand aims to maintain its luxury positioning while leaning into more accessible price points, betting that McQueen's fearless, non-conformist attitude will resonate with younger customers previously priced out of the brand. They are also shrinking their retail network, focusing on strategic markets while transitioning other regions to wholesale distribution. Most significantly, McQueen is cutting menswear from its runway presentations and refocusing on its historic tailoring expertise. This represents a return to the brand's Savile Row roots, but it is happening just as they are dismantling the Italian workshops that could execute that vision at the highest level. The contradiction reveals the impossible position luxury brands find themselves in today. Consumers demand authenticity and craftsmanship, but they also expect accessible pricing and constant novelty. Artisanal production that creates truly exceptional luxury goods requires investment, time, and patience. Luxuries that quarterly earnings reports do not accommodate. Industry observers note that McQueen faces unique challenges among Kering brands. One analyst said that Alexander McQueen is undoubtedly the most problematic of Kering's brands. It is relatively small, has no ut bag, no perfume business, and no major critical or commercial success. Without a signature handbag or fragrance line to provide steady revenue streams like Hermès' Birkin bags or Chanel No. 5, the brand remains vulnerable to fashion's fickle cycles. The timing of these cuts feels particularly cruel given fashion's broader conversation about sustainability and made-in-Italy craftsmanship. While brands publicly celebrate artisanal traditions and slow fashion, McQueen is quietly eliminating the very artisans who embody those values. The disconnect between marketing messages and business realities has never been more stark. For the 180 workers across McQueen's Italian facilities, these are not abstract business decisions. They are career-ending disruptions in communities where luxury manufacturing represents generational employment. Families who have worked in leather goods and footwear for decades face uncertain futures as brands prioritize profit margins over people. The broader implications extend beyond McQueen. If a house with such strong tailoring DNA cannot maintain its artisanal workforce, what hope do other brands have? The Italian luxury manufacturing ecosystem, built over centuries, faces systematic dismantling as fashion houses chase quarterly growth over long-term craft preservation. Yet there might be hope in McQueen's planned return to tailoring focus. The brand acknowledges that online searches for McQueen primarily return sneaker results, not the innovative cutting and construction techniques that defined Lee Alexander McQueen's work. By reconnecting with its Savile Row heritage, McQueen might rediscover the creative and commercial formula that made it special. The question remains whether they can execute that vision while simultaneously cutting the workforce needed to realize it. Tailoring excellence requires not just design talent, but skilled hands to translate ideas into reality. You cannot manufacture precision with reduced headcount and cost-cutting mandates. As union representatives prepare for their February meeting with Luca Di Maio, they carry the hopes of Italian artisans who have dedicated their lives to luxury craftsmanship. Their fight represents more than job preservation. It's about maintaining the human element in an industry increasingly driven by algorithms and profit optimization. The Alexander McQueen story continues to unfold, but its next chapter will be written without the voices of many who helped create its legacy. In fashion's relentless pursuit of commercial success, we may be witnessing the dismantling of the very craftsmanship that makes luxury goods worth coveting in the first place. The boy from Lewisham who learned to cut fabric on Savile Row never imagined his name would become synonymous with workforce reductions and emergency restructuring under François-Henri Pinault's Artemis empire. But that's the final tragedy of the McQueen story, watching artistic vision bow to corporate reality, one layoff at a time.